From the Jennings Communication Building on the campus of Dixie State University, this is Trailblazer Weekly, starring Carrick Segmiller and Drayson Ball.
We are live inside Studio A, inside the CEC TV studios, the Jennings Communication Building on the campus of Dixie State University. You are watching, listening, however you're accessing us, another edition of Trailblazer Weekly. I'm Carrick Segmiller. Joining me, as always, is Drayson Ball. And Drayson, we've got a great show on hand today. We're going to talk more football. 2020 football schedule released, the first full D1 football schedule for the Trailblazers. We'll talk about that. We're going to talk more about Pueblo because why not? Got to prepare for Pueblo. You got Pueblo coming in next week. And then volleyball head coach Robin Felder will be in. We got a new segment coming up today. Great show on the docket, as always.
Yeah, looking forward to it. Like you mentioned, 10 days until CSU Pueblo comes into town for the first home game of this 2019 season. Robin Felder is going to be awesome. She's tremendous to have on this show. I'm really looking forward to it. Plus, our new segment is going to be really, really good.
News or Nonsense is what we're calling the new segment, and we'll explain it when we get to it, but you're going to want to watch it. It's coming up in about 15 minutes. You're going to want to see it. We're going to have a lot of fun during that segment. Let's jump right into the football talk. As we mentioned earlier, Dixie State announcing its full schedule for the 2020 season. Of course, you got to play the 2019 season first, and we're not shy about that. Everybody around here knows that. Coach Peterson knows it. Players know it. You've got this last season of D2 looming ahead, and you can't overlook it. It's hard not, it would be impossible to with the number 9 team in all of Division II coming in next Saturday. But it is an item of business to take care of, and it's newsworthy. 2020 schedule is now released. You're going to see 11 games on that schedule, 7 road games, yes, only 4 at home, and 1 bye. So at least you're not playing, a 12-game slate all the way through. You'll play 11 games. You get the bye. Of course, Dixie State will be the FCS independent, but there it is. Only one NCAA Division I opponent at home, and that is Drake, members of the Pioneer League at the FCS level. But at this point, Drayson, you can't really expect to bring in more than one Division I opponent in your first full season as a Division I member.
Yeah, it's going to be a process. I mean, one of the things you can expect going forward is that this program will continue to build going forward. The fact that we got one Division I opponent coming in to St. George is tremendous. Obviously, we have a few slated already in the future that we're going to have Division I coming into St. George. But yeah, like you mentioned, I mean, within that first 4-year grace period that they give you to kind of when you're not postseason eligible, you can kind of expect that to be your window where you build up this program such that other teams want to come to St. George and play. And why wouldn't they eventually? This is a beautiful town, obviously going to have great weather, not going to have to worry about playing in the snow or the rain or anything like that. You will have to deal with the heat on occasion, but a beautiful place and a beautiful venue to come out and play. So hopefully looking forward going 2022, 2023, those kind of schedules, we'll be able to get some higher profile names. Obviously, SUU and Weber State are the other games we have on the 2020 schedule. Not home games, but games in Utah that the average St. George fan could feasibly travel to.
Well, and I don't think you've ever been able to say for Dixie State football, unless you go back to the junior college days and you're playing against Snow College or you're playing against maybe Rick's College, up in Idaho, not too far away. You've never been able to say you've got a game just hours up the road. And the first Division I football game for Dixie State will be at SUU. That game is going to be incredible. The atmosphere will be electric up in Cedar City. Just a 45-minute drive. Guys sleep in their own beds, wake up, hop on the bus, drive up there, play the game, and you can come back. So that's SUU leading off the season on September 5th. And then you see South Dakota Mines on September 12th. Then on the road again at Montana State on September 19th. Then back home to host Drake, the Division I opponent, on September 26th. Then you have the season-long 3-game road slate. October 3rd, you're at Sacramento State. October 10th, up in Ogden at Weber State. And then the following week, you are at South Dakota. And then after a bye week, you come home to host Azusa Pacific and Western Colorado back-to-back. And then you end the season at South Dakota State and at Illinois State. So that's the full slate for Dixie State in the 2020 season. Should be exciting. I'm definitely looking forward to that season. But again, you can't overlook the fact that you've got a full football season this year.
And one thing we've learned so far over the first 2 episodes of Season 2 at Trailblazer Weekly is the coaches and players are preparing for this season. They're not overlooking this season, at least as far as we can tell. But it wouldn't be great of us to ignore next season as well with the exciting news coming up and the release of the schedule today.
No, absolutely not. We've been waiting for this 2020 schedule to be released for a while. It's been completed for a while. They're just kind of dotting some I's, crossing some T's, and making sure all the contracts are in and all the paperwork's there. And there it is. Released today, Dixie State playing an 11-game slate. You'll get 4 games at home. Again, if you want to take another quick look at that home schedule, 3 Division II opponents, and then the 1 Division I opponent against Drake. So South Dakota Mines, Drake, Azusa Pacific, and Western Colorado will be your 4 home games for the 2020 season. And let it begin. Let the countdown begin to those, but let the countdown continue to CSU Pueblo. We've been talking about it each of the last few weeks, Drayson, and we continue to prepare for Pueblo. We know the football team is as well. Coach Peterson and his boys hosting the Thunderwolves next Saturday on September 7th at 7 p.m., the 2019 season opener. CSU Pueblo, RMAC favorite, and then the AFCA just released its top 25, its preseason poll. It's the American Football Coaches Association, the D2 coaches poll. CSU Pueblo number 9 in the top 10. What a way to start out for Dixie State, hosting a top 10 opponent on their own field.
Yeah, like we've mentioned the last couple of weeks, they're a good football team, and they know how to play football. They're perennially good. We mentioned 7 out of the last regular season conference titles have been won by CSU Pueblo, and they're going to come in and they're going to do what they've done over the previous seasons. One of the things that we were discussing before is they love to stop the run. That's what they're good at. That's what they're going to do for their defensive philosophies. They want to stop the run. One thing that I am hopeful for is that the Trailblazers, at least last season, in last season's game, they were switching between 2 quarterbacks in that first matchup. Hopefully this season we have a little bit more of a stable quarterback situation. We obviously know the assets that they have on the perimeter with the depth at wide receiver. If we can be a little bit more versatile and not be so run heavy, kind of like we were last season, until we got Mike Sanders back healthy. At that point of the season, when Mike Sanders came back, we did have a little bit more of a pass game. But those first 3, 4, 5 games until we had a solid quarterback, pass game wasn't really that great, and hopefully that can be one of the things that they improve on against Pueblo, because if you can hit him with the run and hit him with the pass, you have all the more incentive and all the more help to be able to beat them.
Absolutely. So I sat down, I was looking at this over the last couple of days, talking about preparing for Pueblo. For those of you watching the show right now, you see the lower third down there. The equation for Pueblo's success. How are they so successful year in and year out? You mentioned the defense, and that is a huge part of Pueblo's success. I don't know if huge carries enough weight in that degree, because their defense has kept them in games and given the offense the opportunity to score points and to win ball games. CSU Pueblo, over the last, I looked at the last about 5 seasons. That's dating back to 2014, the year CSU Pueblo won its Division II national championship. So you start that. I mean, they were a great football team before then, but you look at Coach Riston and what they've done in those last 5 years and all the playoff appearances in the national championship. So in those last 5 years, at least according to CSU Pueblo's website, the PAC and the pros section, they've sent 6 football players to the pros, 4 of them on defense, and a large majority of those 4 on the defensive line, and including a current Brandon Payer with the Denver Broncos right now. He was causing problems, headaches the last 4 years at CSU Pueblo. It's all about the defense up front for CSU Pueblo. They do not give up the run, and you mentioned that. But as you look at CSU Pueblo, over the last 5 years combined, they're allowing only 103.5 yards rushing per game. Under 300 yards total offense per game, but nearly under 100 yards per game over the last 5 years. In order to beat Pueblo, you have to be able to run the football, and we'll get to that in just a minute. But another part of CSU Pueblo's equation for success, I thought it was the run game on the offensive side. But as I've studied this, it's been more of a balanced attack. As you look at that last 5 years again, they're very successful on the ground. And Dixie State has learned that firsthand as you look at the last 3 games against CSU Pueblo. Last year in particular, where they rushed for almost 500 yards on the ground. But as you look at the last 5 years, there's only been 2 seasons where their pass yards per game and the rush yards per game are more than like a 20-yard difference. They have a balanced attack on offense. The scary part is that Coach Riston has said in some videos that the CSU Pueblo football Twitter account has put out that their receivers are looking even better than they have in the past. So you could see an even more balanced attack this year. They set you up with the run, and then they hurt you with the pass. They are really, truly balanced on offense, and then that great defensive line, and that, to me, together is CSU Pueblo's equation for success.
Yeah, and that's what they do just unbelievably good. And we've talked about it in the past. They're just really, really good at what they do. And looking at the stats from last season's game against Dixie State, you wouldn't know that they were that balanced of an attack because 53 of their offensive plays, 44 of them were running plays. We mentioned Austin Michi, Marche Denard, 12 attempts for over 300 yards and 5 touchdowns last year. That was enough to get the job done against Dixie State, but they are much more of just a running football team.
They'll take what they can get against you. Yeah. So if they're having success against the run, you can't stop it. They will continue to take advantage. It was exactly what the Thunderwolves did last season. The question is now, how do you beat such a good football team? How can you possibly beat one of the best football teams in the country? CSU Pueblo is the only RMAC team that Dixie State has not defeated in its now 4th year in the conference. They'll look to change that on September 7th. But how do you beat CSU Pueblo? We've talked about CSU Pueblo's run game. It comes down to establishing the run. CSU Pueblo, as we mentioned, has been so good against the run, and Dixie State has not been able to establish the run game in any of its 3 games against CSU Pueblo, rushing for less than 125 yards in all of those games. But as you go back and as you look at CSU Pueblo's 2 losses last year, which was to Colorado School of Mines and then to Minnesota State Mankato in the playoffs, both of those teams rushed for 150 yards or more in those games and then had success through the air as well. You got to set up the run, and it opens the pass, and vice versa. To beat CSU Pueblo, you have to be able to run the football.
And one thing we're hopeful for this season is with this new offensive coach, Paul Peterson, that he claims that he's always going to, what does he call that? He's always going to send it, or he's always
ready to launch.
Ready to launch. That's his offensive philosophy. So hopefully we can have a more balanced attack this year, both rushing and on the perimeter. We know the depth we have at wide receiver. One thing that I got to say is maybe the most important part of this game, and if Dixie State's going to want to win this, stay in the game. Last season, a huge example of this was the thrilling win over Colorado School of Mines. That game was never out of reach for the Trailblazers. In fact, they carried the momentum for the majority of that game. If you let this get a 2-touchdown game early in the first half, CSU Pueblo may just run away and hide with this one. You have to be able to stay in the game, limit turnovers, and keep your offensive execution just as perfect as you can get it if you're going to have a chance to beat this really, really good football team.
You really want to truly do justice when you're looking at this series deep down. And I know it's hard to do because there's only 3 games. It's not a long history. But if you're really trying to get a true indication of how these games are played throughout the 2018 game, you look at the 2016 game, it was an 11-point game, 24-13 victory for CSU Pueblo. 2017 game was 17-10 late in the 3rd quarter. And then the wheels kind of came off for Dixie State in the 4th quarter. You mentioned staying in the game. Trailblazers weren't able to do it in that game in the 4th quarter. But it was a 1-score game heading to the 4th quarter. So last year's game is the difference. It's throw it out. The first 2 games were competitive football games, and I know there's different definitions of what's competitive and what's not. Is it just wins? Is it just losses? But the 2 of the 3 football games have been pretty competitive, and I would say even last year in the blowout, Dixie State had its chances. So there you go. You got to stay in the game, establish the run, and if you do those things, you're going to give yourself a chance to beat a really good football team in CSU Pueblo. And you know what? To have a special season, you're probably going to have to beat them anyway, so why not in week 1?
Undefeated at home last season, beat a ranked opponent on the final home game of the season last year against Colorado School of Mines. They were ranked number 6, if I remember correctly. Mm-hmm. So number 9 should be a breeze, right?
Yeah, absolutely. It should be a breeze. Just mark it down. Sharpie, mark it down. Dixie State, CSU Pueblo, next week, September 7th. Football is just over a week away for Dixie State. We'll have that game for you right here on these very channels and this very station next week on Saturday at 7 p.m. We got to take our first break. When we come back, we welcome our good friend Martin Kelly from the Radio Dixie 91.3 FM studio. He's going to help us out with our brand new segment, Is It News or is it nonsense? We'll answer about 6 questions of that variety when we come back with our news or nonsense segment on Trailblazer Weekly.
Radio Dixie 91.3. We don't play that. Nope, not that. A big fat no there. That's what we play. And stuff like that. On St. George's only alternative, Radio Dixie 91.3. Oh, and from 9 till midnight, we play this. I need a one dance. And this. Radio Dixie 91.3 FM.
For over a century, Dixie State University has been shaping the trailblazers of tomorrow by providing a culture of active learning, active life. With a paradigm of real-world experience mixed with cutting-edge technologies and rich traditions, we provide one of the most affordable educations in the West set against the most stunning backdrop on the planet.
Today's show is brought to you by the Dixie State Campus Store, the official source for DSU Trailblazer clothing, providing students with textbooks, as well as educational, office, and art supplies. Located on the 2nd floor of the Gardner Center, the Dixie State Campus Store, proud sponsor of Trailblazer Weekly.
It's time for Carrick and Drayson to tell us what's news and what's nonsense.
Is it news or is it nonsense? We've got our good friend Martin Kelly from the Radio Dixie 91.3 FM studio hanging out with the sports director over at Radio Dixie. Martin, we've been trying to get you on the show for a long time now, and we've got you today. We're excited to have you. Thanks so much for being here and helping us out with the show. We've got 6 questions here, 6 topics that we're going to cover in this news or nonsense segment. And Drayson, we've been talking about this for a couple of weeks. We're finally making it happen. Here's how it's going to work. Martin's going to ask us a question, and Drayson, we're going to tell the folks whether it's news or whether it's nonsense.
Seems easy enough. Let's do it.
Let's do it. What do you got,
right,
Martin?
then, boys. Let's start with Carrick first. We'll start with football. The Trailblazers have just had over a week with fall camp this year. Is it news or nonsense to say the shortened camp will affect the team in the DSU win column this season?
Football fall camp was technically, yes, a shorter fall camp this season. They only had a week before school started. I say nonsense, and I know you could go either way on this one, but I say nonsense because the season opener is not until September 7th. So yeah, they had to wrap up their quote-unquote fall camp after only about a week. But they had all of last week to run practice as if it were fall camp. Now, I will admit you don't have all day to go in meetings and do the things like you normally do. But you get your practices, you get your walkthroughs, and you work around school. Coach Peterson and his staff had a great plan going into it. They knew that was going to be the case all summer long. I would say no. This shortened fall camp, if you will, it's nonsense. It's not going to have any effect on the win column this season.
It's not often that Carrick and I agree on something, but I got to agree as well. This is nonsense. I mean, like you mentioned, there are a few things that you wish you may have had a couple more days of fall camp to be able to do. But at the end of the day, everyone has the same amount of fall camp throughout the NCAA Division II. These student athletes, as we know, very smart kids. They're going to be able to learn this offense. One of the things that we know about Coach Paul Pearson is he is a very good coach, and he's very good at installing these types of offenses and things like that throughout. So, yeah, I agree it's nonsense. And like you mentioned, Trailblazers are going to have still the same amount of time before the opening game as everyone else is going to have. So I say it's nonsense as well.
All right, then, on to the next question. Drayson, on to volleyball with this one. As soon as the team opened in the fall camp, the preseason coach polls came out, and it ranked DSU at 3rd, despite them returning 2 All-Americans. Is this news or nonsense?
Yeah, Carrick and I pretty much agree usually on preseason polls and what they mean and kind of the connotations that they have going into the season. For me, this is absolute nonsense. I mean, if you look at the teams that were ranked ahead of them, Colorado School of Mines, of which they shared the regular season RMAC championship last year, and then Colorado Mesa was ranked above them as well. They beat Mesa 3 times last season. That's one of the things that really made me puzzle about this. But at the end of the day, it's a preseason poll, and it's based off last season's results. To me, it's nonsense. This volleyball team has been a perennially good volleyball team year in and year out with Coach Robin Felder at the helm. I mentioned they were RMAC champions last year in the regular season. This is nonsense to me, absolute nonsense.
You know what? I say news, but I guess you can kind of tweak it a little bit to meet what you want it to. But I say news because of those very things that you just mentioned. They shared the conference title last year. They beat Colorado Mesa 3 times. Yeah, Mesa's the one that knocked Dixie State out in the NCAA tournament. So when you're looking at preseason polls, that's what they're looking at, what happened at the very last of last year. And Colorado Mesa got the best of Dixie State in that last matchup. Colorado Mesa is only 1 point ahead in the poll. Not a lot separating them really, or the top 3. But to me, that's news. And you bring back 2 All-Americans, yeah, that's disrespect when if you ask me. And that's the coaches of this conference saying, we see who you're bringing back. We see how good you were last year, and yet we think you're only good enough for 3rd place in this conference. So that's news to me. And if I'm Coach Robin Felder, I've got that coach's poll posted in the locker room. And they took this conference by storm last year, and all I can say is watch out, RMAC, because it's coming at you again.
Sticking with preseason polls, Carrick, this is for you. To the golf course now. The women's team is picked to finish first in the preseason polls. Is this news or nonsense?
Again, I think we'll go with news again. Head coach Lindsay Stuckey has got this women's golf team on an upward trajectory, finishing 2nd in the RMAC tournament last season. They bring back a ton. Going to be a very talented squad. Coach Stuckey's incredible. She knows the game of golf like you wouldn't believe, and is a great player. And is a great coach, and she's going to have, and maybe you win the conference championship last year, 2nd place last year, women's golf picked to win the RMAC this year. I think it's news, and I'm excited for this women's golf program.
So everything I just said about the volleyball preseason rankings being nonsense, you can throw that out the window because I think this is news as well. I mean, this is really, really exciting. We saw what the men's golf team did last season. They went on to the Nationals and finished in 9th place there as well. And it's exciting to see that both golf programs right now are trending in the right direction. To me, this is news, like you mentioned. I mean, I love, like you mentioned, what Coach Lindsay Stuckey has done with this program. One thing that I will, I guess, caution or advise or maybe just say to the women's golf team, you have to prove it now. Now you're picked as the RMAC preseason favorite. You have to stay hungry. You have to prove it, and you have to go out and do what you were picked to do in the preseason. So it's news to me. I'm really excited for this women's golf team, and they just have to go out and prove it now.
All right, let's travel
real
back.
Quick, Martin, we cut you off real quick. I just want to say Dixie State women's golf team bringing back 6 players, including 3 upperclassmen from last year's team. Caitlin Diebel Jr. is back. Fellow junior Kaylin Cardall is back, and senior Ashley Fernandez is back, and they're adding a lot as well. So like to name names as much as we can and give these student athletes credit where credit is due. They've earned it over these last few years, and Katie Ford has been one of the leaders of this team the last few years. She graduated last year, and now it's the opportunity for someone else to step up and to lead this program, and you're going to see those names that we just mentioned. It's going to be their year. It's going to be exciting for them. All right, Martin, let's continue.
Let's travel back to football here. Carrick, the Trailblazers are 0-3 against Colorado State Pueblo. In each game, they've been held under 150 yards rushing. Is it news or nonsense to say the Trailblazers have to rush more than 150 yards to win this game?
Again, I got to go with news. We just talked about it in the previous segment. That 0-3 all-time against Pueblo, and in each of those games, Trailblazers have been held under 150 yards rushing. We just talked about it in the previous segment. To beat Pueblo, you got to establish your run game. I say it's news because I'm going to come on and we're going to make some predictions. We're not going to predict any scores or anything next week on the show, but we're going to, maybe make some bold predictions about some things that have to happen in terms of numbers of rushing yards and passing yards or penalties or whatever it may be. I'm going to go out. I'm going to start mine by saying Dixie State has to rush for over 150 yards in that game if they want to win.
Contrary to what I was saying a little bit in the opening segment, I'm going to say this is nonsense. I'm going to say Colorado Pueblo is a very good team. They win a lot of games. And I think this is one of those stats where you could probably pull out any sort of combination of stats and say this is the reason why they win a lot of games. And I call nonsense on that. I say they're a good football team. They win a lot of games. You can probably go back and find a bunch of different other stats. So, yes, it's important to establish the run. The way Martin phrased the question, do they have to have 150 yards to win this game? I say no. They can do it without rushing for 150 yards. They do need to establish the run. I'm not saying they have to, abandon the run altogether. But the fact that they have to have 150 yards rushing to win this game, I think, is nonsense. The Pueblo, like you mentioned, is good on the defensive line. That's kind of one of their strong points. But I think it's nonsense.
Let me ask you one more question. Can you tell me how many rushing yards Dixie State has had against Pueblo in each of those first 3 seasons? I'll give you a hint. It's not many.
I wouldn't be able to tell you off the top of my head, but I can tell you where I can find it. But
DixieStateAthletics.com, you can find it, or CSU Pueblo's website too. 68 rushing yards last year, 105 rushing yards in 2017, 127 rushing yards in 2016. So they've not had more than 127 rushing yards against Pueblo in any of those 3 matchups. 0-3.
So like you mentioned, the first thing we're going to throw the last year's out. So they're averaging over 100 yards rushing. That, to me, is good enough.
Okay.
All right, then on to the next question. Drayson, on the soccer pitch, women's soccer team are opening this season with their 3rd head coach in the last 3 seasons. Is this nonsense or news to say that this coaching change will affect the team?
Yeah, I'm going to go with nonsense here. It is always hard to change coaching staffs over and over and over. It is one of the things that you have to kind of adjust to going forward. Soccer is a little bit different, and obviously it's not quite like football where there's 200, 300 plays you got to remember and memorize and learn. If there's 3 coaches in 3 different years, obviously there are plays and defenses and structures and things like that in soccer. I'm not saying that. What I am saying is it's not quite like football where you got to learn all these 200 or 300 plays. I think this is nonsense. This soccer team showed a lot of promise last year. They're very smart student athletes. They can pick up on new things going forward. One of my most important things is talented players figure out how to play. And we have obviously a lot of up-and-coming players. Last year's freshman of the year, one of the best freshmen in the conference was Whitley Johns. To me, this is a nonsense.
The year that the men's soccer team won the Pac-West Conference, they had a coaching change mid-season, and those talented players found a way to get that done. Love that statement by you right there, Drayson. I'm going to go with nonsense as well. There are some things that can be said just in terms of there's different systems. There's different ways that different coaches like the game to be played. But the Trailblazers were in a very stable system last year with Coach Lucy, and he left. He wanted to get back closer to home, and you can't blame a guy for that. And he's landed nicely at Hofstra where he was before as an assistant. So these players, it was a very stable system when they left, and now they bring in a stud in Steve Golas, and we're gonna have him on the show sometime in the coming weeks because he is a soccer genius. I was having a conversation with him a couple of weeks ago, and he was saying that he bumped into a couple people that he said, well, geez, I have all these people putting this pressure on me, but I bump into my coaching colleagues from across the country and people even in the conference, and they say, oh man, we're you go in Division I, the soccer program is going to be in great places here in the next few years because you are a wizard on the sideline. And he was, telling me that he was telling these people, slow down. We got to figure this year out first. But he will. Everywhere he's gone, he's had success as an assistant, helping take Division I teams to the NCAA tournament. He opened an NAIA women's soccer program in their debut season. They went 10-2-3 at Texas A&M, Texarkana. So he's got the track record. He's got it on his resume. Steve Golas is a stud. Can't wait to see everything this women's soccer team does under his guidance. It's nonsense.
All right, final question for you guys. Drayson, the Human Performance Center is near completion. Is it nonsense or news to say that it will be ready by homecoming?
I think it's news. I think that's one of the biggest things, at least one of the biggest storylines on campus coming into this fall semester. The Human Performance Center, if you haven't seen it, go ahead and drive by the Human Performance Center. You can't miss it. It's a tremendous looking building. it's going to be it's going to do so many things, including athletics, including studies, including things to do with the school, all that kind of stuff. It's going to bring a lot of attention. It's going to be great for recruits. Imagine bringing in a recruit and showing them a human performance center to where they can do all kinds of different activities, that kind of thing. High quality athletic training. I think it's really a great thing that the school has done in building this human performance center. One of the great things that we can look forward to going into this season as we launch into Division I. It's news for me.
Absolutely huge news, massive news, incredible news for this ever since they broke ground on this thing almost 2 years ago, or however long ago it was. You can't miss this building as you drive across town, whether you're up on the Red Hill, whether you're driving down University Avenue, it's just too big. If you miss it, your eyes are closed and you're going to get in a car crash because your eyes are closed. Otherwise, you're going to see it. And I don't know what else to say than just rehash everything that you just said, Drayson. For recruits and not just for athletics. We had Dr. Jason Booth, Director of Athletics, in here a couple of weeks ago on Fall Sports Preview. And he was quick to remind that, this is not an athletics facility. The pool is basically going to belong to the women's swimming team, Olympic-sized pool. Head coach Tamara McAllister and her team thrilled about that. They get to practice on campus now instead of having to go out to the Washington City Community Center. And they get to host events. It's going to be huge for their program. But just for the school in general, making the move to Division I, you put a building like that on campus and you attract just a different type of student, a different type of student athlete in terms of what our teams are going to be able to do with their camps, basketball camps, volleyball camps, have all those extra courts available. It's going to be, I saw a tweet earlier this week talking about how it's probably the greatest rec center in the state of Utah right now, and it should be. The academic side is open right now. It was open for day one of class, and then the rest of it, the recreational side, is on schedule. Should be finished around homecoming, if not right after, a little bit later. So you're looking at late October, early November. That the rest of that will be up. Should be complete by the end of the fall semester for sure. By the time students are back after the Christmas break, it'll be up and running, and you and I will be playing one-on-one on the basketball courts on the roof, and I'll be just taking you to school.
I'll referee that.
Fair enough. And if not basketball, pickleball or tennis.
Yes.
So either one.
Well, Martin, buddy, thanks so much for stopping by and helping us out with our news or nonsense. I think it went very well. We're planning on doing things like this much more often in the future as we introduce new ideas and new segments to the show in different ways to help get the discussion going. Next week, we'll bring back the Know Your Foe segment with for CSU Pueblo, and we keep these things rolling. So, Martin, thank you so much. Appreciate you stopping by, buddy.
Happy to be here, man. Happy to be here.
We got to take another break. When we come back, volleyball head coach Robin Felder will join us on the set. The team has been in camp for a couple of weeks now, and next week the Trailblazers host a huge tournament. And I say huge, I mean huge, not just important, but bringing in lots of teams. Volleyball will be back in the Burns, and the season will be up and going. We'll talk about that and much more with head coach Robin Felder right on the other side.
Awkward. I'm the awkward silence. You try to avoid me, then there I am again.
But an awkward silence can be a great thing.
Like Kelly here is about to demonstrate.
You haven't really been yourself lately. Are you okay?
Find out how you can help a friend with their mental health at seizetheawkward.org.
I take the road less traveled, run free, unwind, unravel someplace outside with lots to do. Green trees, red rocks, and don't forget that blue sky. The sunshine shining, sunshine pouring on me. Think I might just stay a while. Say hooray all day because the sun is gonna shine on me. Sun is gonna shine on me. Sun's gonna shine on me.
When I was your age, I was just like you, fascinated by stars. But now I get to search for life in the universe. And who knows, maybe life is looking for us too.
So we're like aliens to them?
Yeah. Does anyone want to be a scientist now?
I do.
Awesome. We need more girls in STEM.
Maybe we can find aliens.
Action.
Where do you find the titans of classical music in St. George? Classical music on Radio St. George, 100.3 FM. Where do you find the legends of jazz? Evenings on Radio St. George, 100.3 FM.
Hey, Bobo, do trees tell each other stories?
I'm sorry. I'm afraid I don't know that.
Hey, why don't we go find out? Listen.
Do clouds take naps?
I couldn't tell you.
Dad, do stars visit their friends?
Look!
Today's show is brought to you by Rock Canyon Bank, serving Utah businesses and agriculture for over 25 years, with locations in Pleasant Grove, Orem, Provo, Spanish Fork, Fillmore, and at 94 East Tabernacle, right here in St. George. Rock Canyon Bank, back to banking. Member FDIC, equal housing lender.
Welcome back inside Trailblazer Weekly. We want to remind you we're live on Radio Dixie 91.3 FM, as well as the Dixie State Athletics YouTube page, and on TDS cable channel 108. That's HG channel now here on CEC TV. As we welcome in head coach of the volleyball team, Robin Felder. Robin, thanks so much for having us. Thanks so much for being on our show today.
Yeah, you bet. It's good to be here.
Robin, let's just jump right into it. First tournament, first games of the season, right around the corner. Not too long now. We know you've been in your fall camp for the last couple of weeks, getting ready for this upcoming season, the final season as a member of the Rocky Mountain Athletic Conference and in Division I. Take us through a little bit about fall camp, what you've kind of seen, what are your first impressions of this team in your fall camp so far?
Yeah, it's been fast and furious. I mean, that's what it's been since the minute we hit the ground running on that Wednesday. We've just been going. It was awesome that my kids came back in shape. I think that was the biggest thing, was that the kids had put in the work over the summer and they just came back ready to rock. So every position, literally as coaches, we've just been like, this is wide open. I mean, you've got 4 kids in every spot just battling for that starting spot. And they're all doing such a great job. The chemistry's awesome. The camaraderie's awesome. There's no drama. It's just all about playing volleyball and learning our system. So it really has been a great start to our season.
Mentioned it in our previous segment, picked 3rd in the preseason Rocky Mountain Athletic Conference poll, the coaches poll. I have to imagine that gets some sort of reaction from you. You shared the Rocky Mountain Athletic Conference championship last season with Colorado School of Mines. Colorado Mesa, who was above you as well. You beat them 3 times last season. Take us through your initial reactions. Picked to finish 3rd in the preseason poll.
Yeah, I mean, that for us showed us that we're right where we need to be. The coaches have respect for our program. We lost 5 phenomenal seniors, and they had big shoes to fill. So I think we have a target on our back, but not too big, and we're just ready to go out and compete, honestly.
Chatting with volleyball head coach Robin Felder here on Trailblazer Weekly as the Trailblazers get set to open the 2019 season. Coach, you, like most of the other fall coaches, have had to kind of plan your fall camp around that early school start date. I mean, you didn't get to open till, was it the 13th or the 14th? Yeah. And school started on the 19th.
Yeah.
What was that like? I mean, you knew for a while that was the case, but what was that like knowing that, hey, we've got to plan around this and we only get 5 or 6 days before having to work around class schedules again? Of course, your team goes early enough in the morning. Maybe it wasn't big enough of a headache, but I'm sure to a certain extent, it was a little bit of extra planning and making sure you got everything in that you wanted to before school started.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we really had 5 days before school started, and we just tried to do our best to prepare them. I mean, ball control's been our key since the minute we got in the gym. If you can't pass, you can't do anything. And so knowing that we'd had a really strong group of kids that stayed here this summer and trained on their own and put in the work this summer, as soon as we got in the gym, that ball control issue was totally settled. Our ball control was right where it needed to be, so all we did was spring off from where we left this spring, and that was working in our offense, tough serving, aggressive has been our mindset, and we've been able to do that because of the work these kids put in this summer.
Let's talk 2019 roster. You mentioned, how in shape these players are when they've come back from their off-season workouts, and let's talk first about your group of returners, led by a couple of All-Americans and Megan Trainor and Lauren Gamble, and there's a ton of them that I'm not gonna be able to mention. So, Coach, let's talk about those returners. Those are the two All-Americans and two of your main leaders. But let's talk about those returners and who you're leaning on to help lead this team this year.
Yeah, I mean, having Lo Gamble and Meg back that's just like, okay, it's just that comfort of knowing that you've got two kids that can get it done. But honestly, we've just had leadership in all the positions. Jordan Nelson at the setting position, she's been unreal this year. I mean, she truly has been, her location spot on. She's running our offense like champ. She's just been amazing coming back from the summer. We had a transfer in Lizzie Clark. She's fit into our system so nicely. She's a slider. She just gives us another dimension to our offense that we haven't had in years past. Toa's back on the outside. She's still killing people right and left with heavy arm, big swings. And then our defense. I mean, we have 4 liberos this year, and every single one of them, in my opinion, is a Division I libero. They have ball control, they're scrappy, so I really think our defense is going to be another huge part of our team this year.
We talked returners. Let's talk new faces now. Some of the maybe transfers, freshmen, people that are standing out this season who are going to make an impact this year on your team, people who are maybe surprising you in fall camp. Give us some of the new names we might be hearing come this season.
Yeah, I mean, Becca Ferris we had prior to her mission. She came back off her mission in the spring, so she'll be new, somewhat new this year. We have Lizzie Clark, like I said, she's a transfer from Laramie. We got Cy Collins, she was a transfer from Snow, and that kid, I mean, she is hungry. She always says that. She's like, Coach, I'm just hungry. She wants to play. She wants to compete. She's a high flyer. She's like 5'8" and biggest jumper on the team, so she can fly. And then our freshmen, I mean, just coming in right away, and you would never know they're freshmen. They're just ready to go, very physical, and I think it's just going to be a great year for those newbies to fit in.
Chatting with Coach Robin Felder, head coach of the volleyball team here live on Trailblazer Weekly. Coach, let's talk a little bit about your season expectations. Obviously, you set the bar extremely high for your athletes, and rightly so, and you do a tremendous job every year of getting these women ready for the season and training and everything that goes into being a head coach of a volleyball team. Talk a little bit about kind of your season expectations going in. We mentioned the preseason poll. We've talked a little bit about that, but just kind of overall, what's your season expectations? Kind of give us a rundown of where you maybe expect to finish and what your overall goals are.
I mean, every year, I don't even have to say it because I've got kids that are like, we want to win. I mean, that's really it. But we really put the word greatness on our season this year. We just want to be great, whether that means we go undefeated or whether that means we win another conference championship at the end of the season. We just want to be great. And, this is a springboard for us going into the WAC. We want to be great for that. So, I think we use the word greatness a lot and relentless. We just want to be that team that is coming at you all the time, that you just can't let your guard down or we're going to blow you up. So I think that really defines our season.
Coach, of course, what a way to start your time in the RMAC last year and in winning the RMAC championship. But what have you as a coach and a coaching staff been able to kind of reflect on last year and learn from the new conference and then take into your preparations for this year to say, yeah, we won the conference last year, but if we do this and this and this even better this year, then we should be able to repeat and do the same thing over again?
Yeah, I think last year for us was just fun because we were the unknown. So when we'd come in and beat people up, it was like, what? Who is this team? This year, there's the targets there. So there won't be that surprise factor anymore, but I just think we have a a group of kids that loved what we did last year and they want more. So we went to the NCAAs, we won, they want to go deeper into the tournament. I mean, we've even used words like national championship in our gym because they think we can do it. And honestly, that belief goes a long way, and I'm on board, we're all on board. I think if we're all in, I really do believe we have a group of kids that can get it done.
I find it hard to believe that you truly snuck up on anyone as a surprise in the conference last year after just looking at your track record in the Pac-West Conference and how successful your program has been. But like you mentioned, that target's there this year. Certainly won't surprise anybody this year. It all starts next week. Let's talk about the season opening tournament inside the Burns Arena. You've got 4 or 5 different opponents that you will play, but another 4 or 5 teams that are in, and we're going to be playing volleyball all weekend long, second year in a row that we've done this. Talk about how that all came together again, because it's for the most part different group of teams than last year, right? No repeat teams from last year. So just talk about how it all came together to say, hey, let's do it again. Let's bring some teams in and let's play at home.
Yeah, I mean, that was the biggest thing. We wanted to play at home, and we love playing in the Burns. If we don't say that enough, we love playing in the Burns.
Jetty, plug your ears.
But no, it's an awesome facility. There's so much room to run and chase. The ceilings are high. You can't beat the energy in the Burns. It's awesome. And this group of teams that we have coming, I mean, we've got 2 great teams from the GNAC. We brought some teams from the RMAC. We really just wanted to get some good in-region competition. Like I said before, we always have a great matchup with Northwest Nazarene. We wanted to make sure we got to play them again. St. Cloud was a team we were excited about matching up against, as well as Stanislaus and Simon Fraser. So just really looking for a great opening weekend to kind of see what we've missed and to see where we need to go from there.
Volleyball team starts it with St. Cloud State on September 5th, like you mentioned, in the Burns Arena at 7 p.m. Bringing in, like you mentioned, a lot of good teams: St. Cloud State, Northwest Nazarene, Colorado Christian, Simon Fraser, Stanislaus State as well. Obviously, it's a big tournament and a big weekend, and you guys do a tremendous job putting it on, and Dixie State is a great host. Obviously, these games matter a lot early on in the season to kind of see how you measure up and kind of the things you need to work on. They're not RMAC games, so you don't necessarily count against the standings, obviously, but they give you kind of a perspective going forward into the conference schedule of what you need to work on. How do you use these games to say, here's where we're weak, here's where we're strong, this is what we need to improve on going into our RMAC slate? Yeah, I mean, we defend ourselves really well because we know ourselves. But then you see a team that might have a different part of their offense. They might be in a 5-1 versus a 6-2 volleyball IQ. But you know, so we're not used to playing against that because we don't do that. So as soon as you match up against a team that maybe runs a quicker middle or has a great slider, or their kids attack the sidelines versus the middle of the court, you know, you really see where you're weak. So I think that really is what preseason is all about. Obviously you want to win and you want to play good volleyball, but you really are looking for where are we weak so we can go back to the drawing board, fix it, get better at it, so that when we see those things in RMAC, we're ready for it. Obviously exciting at times, you know, season's right around the corner. You know, you're set up well for this 2019 season, but hard to overlook this season as it is. But we do have 2020 looming as we're going into Division II. How has it been getting your players to not overlook this season and not say, oh, man, I can't wait to get to 2020 and so we can be Division I players and student athletes? How do you get your teams to focus on, hey, we have one more season in the Rocky Mountain Athletic Conference in Division II, let's not look past it? Yeah, I mean, I think we're headed to Division I, but we're not there yet. So for us, we rarely talk about it. I mean, if anything, it's just, it's going to be so cool, but we got business, and we really want to finish our time in Division II, our time in the RMAC. We only get 2 seasons there, so we would love to put a stamp on the RMAC. So honestly, we're excited for D1. It's going to be great when it gets here. But for now, we're focused on this season at hand and really trying to just keep these girls prepared for this season.
I want to print that on a shirt. We're headed to Division I on the front, but we're not there yet on the back. And you know, I'll admit I'm the one that's brought it up quite a bit, almost with every team on our fall sports preview, because I mean it's a talking point. It's something that's coming, but I have really enjoyed and loved the responses that I've got to, like, hey, we don't really want to talk about that right now because we have goals in mind this season. You mentioned the word national championship. I get chills when you say that. It's exciting to see where these programs are headed, and yours especially, Coach, this season. So we appreciate you stopping by the studio. We'll let you get going and get prepping. We got those games coming up next week, and we're looking forward to them. St. Cloud State will be the opener for Dixie State on Thursday night at 7 p.m. inside the Burns Arena, and then a couple matches each day on Friday and Saturday. So be sure to be there, or it's your own fault if you don't come and enjoy great volleyball.
Volleyball inside the Burns Arena is something. It's something else. It's one of the things you just have
Incredible.
to be there. You have to be able to be there live in person. We love the SAC. I love the SAC. It's electric energy, but being in the Burns is just a little bit different, and it's really electric. The volleyball team's going to be tremendous this season. Come out and support.
Come out and support. Coach, thanks so much. We got to take our final break. When we come back, we wrap it all up. We'll hit some of our main topics again and bring some things back, talk a little more football as we get ready for CSU Pueblo next Saturday. Coming up next on Trailblazer Weekly.
1 in 3 adults has pre-diabetes. 1 in 3. That means it could be you, your favorite brother, your other brother, you, your football buddy, your football buddy, you, the boss, the boss's boss. If 1 in 3 adults has pre-diabetes, that means it could be you, your barber, your barber's barber.
Nice work. Thanks.
You, your plumber,
Breathe right into your foot.
your plumber's masseuse.
Yes.
You, your dog walker,
On your left.
your cat jogger. Or you, your co-pilot, your co-pilot's co-pilot. While 1 in 3 adults has prediabetes, with early diagnosis, prediabetes can be reversed. Take the risk test at doihaveprediabetes.org to know where you stand.
Today's show is brought to you by Honolulu Grill, bringing you a variety of Hawaiian and other Polynesian foods. Honolulu Grill's unique tropical taste will leave your mouth watering for more. Located at 706 700 South in St. George. Honolulu Grill. Come feast with us.
Welcome back inside the CEC TV studios. I want to remind you, if you miss any of the interviews, great interview we just had with Coach Felder of Dixie State Women's Volleyball. If you miss any interviews, don't fear. Head over to youtube.com/Dixie State Athletics, or if you're on your phone or your iPad, pull up the YouTube app and search Dixie State Athletics. You'll find our YouTube channel, and there's a playlist in there, actually. It's titled Interviews and Promos. You can go and you can watch all the interviews. We clip them out after the show. Drayson and I, the work does not stop when the show ends on Wednesdays. We're working hard to get the show recaps ready for social media, to get these clips ready that we share with you throughout the week. You can watch all the interviews on demand. Also want to remind you about our official website, DixieStateAthletics.com/Trailblazer Weekly. You've got playlists for this full episodes from this year, from last year, and again, all the interviews. In the future, we're going to get our future guests up on kind of a lineup so that you can know who's coming and plan on who's going to be on the show and when on the website. It's a great resource. If you miss an interview, Drayson, don't worry about it. You can go back and you can rewatch it. That's what you do with most of my sports content anyway. I never watch anything live anymore.
Yeah, and while you're searching up our YouTube videos, follow us on Twitter, social media, Facebook. We got Instagram page as well, at DSU Blazer Weekly for Twitter, and then just Trailblazer Weekly on Instagram and Facebook. So a lot of good stuff. We pump out a lot of good content. Weekly giveaways. We're going to be trying to do that as well this year. So make sure you keep an eye out for that, as well as all the other ways you can access Trailblazer Weekly.
What a show we've had today, and we've got about 5 minutes left just to put a bow on this and wrap it up. For those of you that are just tuning in, you're hopping in your car, getting ready to drive home, and not quite 5 o'clock yet, but maybe some of you going to work earlier, you're hopping in the car, you're turning on 91.3 because I'll be honest, it's like number one on my preset. Plays the best music of any radio station in town. Shout out to Sean Dinovan and his crew, and Martin Kelly running things over in the radio studio right now. Favorite radio station in St. George. So if you're hopping in your car, you're just tuning in, didn't hear the first segment, we talked a lot about CSU Pueblo and this football game that's coming up next Saturday. If you're a Dixie State fan and you didn't know that, you've been living under a rock. Welcome, thanks for joining us here in the conversation. But CSU Pueblo is in next week, number 9 in the country, preseason RMAC favorite. Drayson, catch us up to speed. How do you beat them?
Yeah, I mean, we talked about it in the first segment. You have to establish the run game. You brought up a great stat that the only 2 losses from last season was when they allowed over 150 yards rushing. And so that's one of the things you have to do with this Colorado with this Pueblo team that is very, very good up front. They're very, very good on the defensive line. One of the things that I remember from our pregame last season against Colorado School of Mines, one thing that I mentioned is that in order to beat a team like that of that caliber, you almost have to play perfectly. And that's what the Trailblazers will have to do. They will have to almost play a perfect game. They're certainly capable of beating this team. They have been close, and they have been able to compete with them over the previous 3 matchups. But you got to play nearly perfect, limit the turnovers, establish the run game, and then you have to be able to be balanced, both running and offensively. Your defense has to be very, very good as well.
That's how you beat CSU Pueblo. What's their equation for success? We talked about and we mentioned their balanced attack. I myself, as I was getting ready for the show today, I kind of slipped into this thinking that, CSU Pueblo, they're not very balanced. They're really good on the run. They'll kill you on the run. That's because the 3 games that we played against them, the Dixie State has played against them, they've killed us on the ground. Last year, especially when CSU Pueblo rushed for nearly 500 yards on probably the fewest carries in history to get to that many yards. I don't have the number right in front of me, but we've talked about it in the last few weeks. They had a couple different running backs that rushed for a combined 15 attempts, and those 2 combined were up over 300 yards rushing and 5 touchdowns. I mean, it was incredible. This is a team that runs the ball very well, but they throw the ball well too. They've sent guys to the pros, a couple different receivers to the pros over the last 5 years. The scary part is head coach John Riston of CSU Pueblo. I was listening to an interview that he did a couple of weeks ago, and he says that his receiving core is one of their most improved positions. So you want to talk about a team that's already balanced, that can already hurt you in almost every way offensively, and now you're improving one of the positions that was, quote-unquote, a little bit weaker offensively. They're sending guys to the pros at receiver, but that's one of their weaker, quote-unquote, positions, and head coach John Risson says they're looking even better than they have in the past. So all that means is better passing game, better balanced attack. Austin Michi's back. Now, Michi's never been the feature back. He's been kind of the, that number 2 guy and the 1-2 punch, but you're probably going to see him as the feature back this year, but he's a humble enough guy that he's taken his role, and he'll hurt you however he can. But they're loaded at running back. Receivers are going to be even better this year. That balanced attack will be there. That's what has made their offense so successful, plus their defense is so stingy that keeps them in games. That's their recipe for success.
The fact that Austin Michi hasn't been a feature back is not because he's not good enough.
No.
He is absolutely tremendous. The only reason he was the second kind of tier guy was because they had a guy named Marche Denard who was an All-American candidate last season. Like you mentioned, it's going to be one of those hard things for the Trailblazers to do to stop the offensive run game of Pueblo. But one hopefully saving grace is they're going to have a new quarterback this year. Carson Edwards last season was their starter. He's a senior. He's graduated. The likely starter returning this season is probably going to be Gunnar Lamphere. Hasn't taken a snap. At least last season he did not take a snap. So hopefully they can get a little bit of saving grace there.
We'll know for sure kind of what the coaches are thinking come Monday. The depth charts will be exchanged and released Monday. We should have our hands on those by the show next week, and we can kind of look at that in our Preparing for Pueblo segment next week. We're running out of time here, but next week we'll know your foe. We'll bring that back. We've got a ton of great stuff coming up next week on the show. Great stuff. Want to thank all of our sponsors on the show in the last 30 seconds that we have. Honolulu Grill, Rock Canyon Bank, and the Dixie State Campus Store really stepping up big and helping us out this year, and couldn't do the things we do without those great sponsors. So appreciate them. Appreciate all the CEC TV crew and Martin Kelly for joining us on the show, Drayson, and for helping keeping us on the air. We got a great crew working for us.
Fantastic crew. The set looks great. We mention it every week, but I can't get over the way the set looks. CEC TV crew does a great job. Thanks much to Martin Kelly at 913.
That'll do it for us today. We will catch you on the show next week. It's game week next week. We've made it through the preseason. Finally, the preparations are done. Well, not quite, but the preparations are done. It's game week next week. Let's play some football. Let's play some volleyball. Thanks for tuning in, everybody. We'll catch you next week on Trailblazer Weekly.